Hello, this is the Story Kiosk, a new community podcast sharing short, true stories written by you, our listeners. I'm your host, Julian. Welcome to the show. If you listened to our last episode about an adventurous kitty cat who lived on a canal boat, you'll know that we're big fans of sweet, light-hearted stories. But the podcast contains multitudes. Previous installments have touched on coming-of-age moments, learning from grief and loss, and this episode certainly leans towards the more emotionally intense end of the spectrum, featuring a story from a friend of mine called Fiona. Fiona was among the first people I told about this project. She runs the local writers collective that I attend, and frankly, I don't think the podcast would exist were it not for that community. What Fiona has written for us is very vivid and sharp, but I want to let it speak for itself, so let's get right into it. Today's story is titled The Rulebook. The Saturday I turned 21, I saw my father's blue Saab glide past the shopping centre exit where I waited to pull out. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. That car was as unmistakable as the man who owned it. Neat, precise, self-assured. Yet there was something in the way it swept by that unsettled me. My father had been distant for months. My mother and I had developed a whispered suspicion about him, an unease that shivered through the house like static. He was a shift worker, rarely home at predictable hours. He'd pulled away from us in fragments, so gently that we couldn't prove it, only sense it. As the Saab curved away, I felt a tug in my gut. Instead of turning right to go home, I flicked on my indicator and followed him. His car headed west, to a part of the city he had no reason to go, opposite to both his home and work. The further he drove into unfamiliar streets, the stranger the feeling grew, that something was about to break open. It's strange how instinct announces itself, not as logic, but as a low hum, a truth your body knows before your mind allows it. My pulse quickened. I drove closer, shortening the gap between our cars until the front of my mother's crappy old manual almost kissed the slick Saab's bumper, playing chicken, daring him to look in his rearview mirror. I wanted him to see me, for him to feel caught. But not once did he look in the rearview. He drove for miles without a single glance back. Who doesn't look in their mirror for miles and miles? Only someone welded to what lies ahead. Finally, his car turned into a quiet street, lined with identical prefab houses. I idled far enough back not to be seen, feet trembling on the balance point between clutch and accelerator, sensing everything was about to tip one way or the other. I watched him walk to the door. It opened immediately. An older, ashen-haired woman reached for him and kissed him, she and the house consuming him entirely. The shock hit like ice. Mother's clapped-out 1980s manual shuddered beneath me, as if it too had witnessed the betrayal. The car shook heavily. I couldn't hold the balance. The car stalled. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Instinctively, I started searching the glove box, the side pockets, for anything. My hand found a lipstick in the center console. I uncapped it, twisted the base to see the fiery red, the lipstick of bathroom mirror ultimatums, the kind meant for bad women and warnings. I ran to his car and dragged the red across the windscreen. Don't come home. This moment was the axis of everything. The instant when innocence shifted to clarity, and clarity became rage. We think discovery is cathartic, but it isn't. It's annihilating. I drove home, nervous system on fire, fingers choking the steering wheel. The roads blurred into one long strip of grey. I rehearsed the words, how to tell my mother what I'd seen without crushing her. To be honest but not brutal. To deliver the truth without shattering her. The adrenaline refused to settle. Every muscle carried the echo of that door closing behind him. When I arrived home, my mother was in the kitchen, hands deep in the sink. She turned when I entered, her face soft and expectant, the face of someone waiting for an ordinary conversation. "What's wrong, love?" She read me immediately. I tried to speak, but the words caught in my throat. Eventually, I managed inarticulately. "Mum, I saw him. I followed Dad. He's with someone else." She paused, the suds on her hands dripping. The quiet stretched between us, and then she simply nodded. "I thought so," she said eventually. Resignation edged her voice, the quiet acceptance that her suspicions had been right just as expected. "Thank you for telling me." She dried her hands, leaned against the counter, and exhaled, taking the pane I handed her and folding it neatly, as if it were laundry. I, meanwhile, was raging, the kind of rage that comes after revelation but has nowhere to go. I couldn't bear her calm. I wanted her to scream, to break plates, to make the world match the size of what we'd just lost. I stormed into my father's room. He had been sleeping in my brother's old bedroom for years, claiming it was because of his shift work and a terrible snoring habit. The room was half bachelor pad, half shrine to deceit. His television, his computer, his books, his papers. The tiny empire of a man who had quietly withdrawn from family life while pretending not to. I tore through drawers and shelves. I found a videotape labeled from an art workshop, and an art magazine with a woman's name, Val, and a phone number written on the corner. My mother didn't try to stop me. When the video played, the footage was slow and banal, boring artists at a long table working on printmaking. But then the camera panned, and that same ashen-haired woman caught sight of the camera and stepped out of frame. Case closed. My mother had crossed the world at just 19 for love, and that love had now moved into another woman's living room. She never breathed a word of it to her parents back home. Shame convinced her it was her fault, that one terrible man's need for validation was somehow a slight on her own character. Her birthday gift to me that day was the generational rulebook that teaches us that female survival means to endure quietly and protect others from your pain. I accepted her gift politely, with all the care and tenderness she pressed into it. Then, for both of us, I threw it into the fire. A thousand thank yous to Fiona for sharing that story, for recounting an obviously very painful memory with so much clarity and care. That moment she described of childhood innocence giving way to a less rose-tinted clarity will, I'm sure, be one that many listeners recognize. And I think that would also make for a good writing prompt if you're thinking of sharing a story, but don't know where to start. Maybe cast your mind back and tell us about a time you made a painful discovery, about your family or yourself or the world at large. To submit a story to the podcast, just pop over to our website, www.storykioskpod.com. All stories, all tones, all flavors are welcome, so long as your story is short and true. But let's wrap things up there. Thank you again to Fiona for her support and for sharing her story. Thank you for listening, and wherever in the world you are right now, we wish you a good morning, a good day, or a good night. The next edition of the Story Kiosk, the final of the year, will be out in 2 weeks. Hope to see you then.